I think, like many people, I owe it to a particular teacher. And this was at Chatham Grammar School for Girls, and my wonderful teacher for O-level history. And we were studying the causes of the Crimean War. And there's something about that war and the tragedy of it and the mismanagement of the war, and the nurses and the heroism that really captured my imagination. But it was a lot was due to this wonderful teacher who made me want to know more, made me want to do more history. And yet, surprisingly, I didn't go on to read history. But history has always been very, very important to me. And I always borrowed a lot of history books from the local library. So I'm eternally grateful to that teacher, because the lovely thing was, when I came to write my first trade book, it was about the Crimean War. So thank you, Miss Perkins, because I do feel I owe that passion for history to that teacher. It started when I was struggling to read Dr. Zhivago and not getting on very well with it, because it's a very intense and complex book. And then, very fortunately, a notice went up at school on the notice board, if anyone interested in doing Russian in the sixth form. Well, I grabbed at the chance, because for me, Russia had been always so fascinating, intriguing, difficult to pin down, because it was such a closed society, the Soviet bloc, you know, the Iron Curtain. And the language to me was so beautiful. Something about that language I found so beguiling, and I'd always wanted to learn it. So I was determined, and I struggled. It was very hard. But once I got into it, I felt I connected with something. I know sometimes people will say, oh, you know, it's a previous incarnation, or have you got Russian blood? Well, I haven't got any Russian blood, but something about Russia, it does inspire me. I think part of it for me is getting to the truth of things. I love research. I absolutely love winkling away at things until I get something new, something exciting, something I didn't know, or people more generally didn't know. And I've often thought, if I hadn't been a writer, I should have been a detective. But for me, it's the thrill of the chase. I love research. I love being in a library and opening an obscure journal or a long forgotten book and finding something new. And of course, people say to me, oh, why don't you try fiction? And I might one day. I mean, I do have an idea for a novel, but I always feel real people, real lives, real events are so much more extraordinary. When you come down to it, the greatest stories couldn't have been made up.